Hello everybody, my name is Sam Parsons and today I'm going to show you all how to create common dashboard items and objects using Adobe Illustrator. Big thank you to Autumn Batani for inviting me today to talk to you about Illustrator and to showcase how it can create these objects for you. I will attempt to do it justice because it's a fantastic piece of software. I will also attempt to talk around what I'm doing as I do it. So let's open up Illustrator and get started. This is the welcome screen for Illustrator, and you would typically see some stuff that you've been working on in the middle there, although these are quite old things from myself. On the left-hand side, we're going to click Create New. That's going to take us to a pop-up window that has some preset sizes of artboards. So artboards are what we're going to work on in Illustrator, and we're going to want to create an artboard that will fit the right size for what we're doing. You have different options to choose for whether or not you're working with web in mind or printing or a print output. And the difference with that is the difference in color mode that it applies. But for now, we're just going to work in print. We're going to keep our dimensions using pixels because coming from this from a Tableau point of view, and we use pixels in Tableau, so that makes it easy to line up. RGB is going to help us because we're going to use a hex code, and I'm going to stick with these dimensions for my artboard. I'm just going to call this, give my project a bit of a name, so Autumn's Image. I would call it Autumn's Image, and I'll explain that in a second why. So create, and we will be presented with an artboard on screen, and that's the white area that we're seeing here on the screen. Yeah. If I quickly move to my magnifying glass and zoom out, you'll see my artboard is actually sitting on a workspace that is this big grey box around it. So I can create anything within that workspace. It doesn't have to be on the artboard. Artboards are just an illustrator's means of allowing you to sort of compile different objects and different pieces or different projects in a single space. It's just an area where you can put stuff. So this is our artboard that we've just defined with, if I were to select it using my artboard tool down the left-hand side, it highlights it, and at the top here, it tells me the width of it and the height of it, and that's what we specified. I'll just quickly, for anybody who's unfamiliar with Illustrator, quickly run through the console here. On the left-hand side, we have a number of tools that we can use. And these tools all have their own uses, obviously, but some of them have a little a little sort of triangle in the bottom right-hand corner. That means it's indicating that there's more tools underneath it. So for the pen tool, if I were to click on that and hold it down, and then you get access to a number of different tools under there. For the rectangle shapes, you can get access to more shapes by clicking onto that. At the top, we've got a toolbar. This toolbar changes depending on what objects you're selected on at the time and what you're working in. So you'll get a different set of options up here. You'll typically get the same set of options over in the properties windows on the right-hand side. I tend to have this open because I can just see what I want just more clearly in this space than across the top. Down here, we've got a number of panels, and this is to do with our different windows. And within here, so we've got color panels, and we've got a number of different tabs in each of these that you can click into. So those two are the same thing. These three are these three options down here. You can minimize them, you can maximize them. Depends how you want to work. You can customize this, take them out, put them in, put new things in. It depends on however you want to work. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to recreate an image of a number of dashboard objects that you would typically place in a Tableau dashboard, buttons, background effects, all sorts. And we're going to try and replicate one that Autumn has pre-made for us. So if I go into my file at the top of my toolbar and into place, I'm going to select the image that Autumn has sent across to me for me to replicate in this video. And now I have the option to place this anywhere. I can place it outside my artboard as long as it's in that working area, the workspace, or I can place it on my artboard. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to place it at the top left-hand corner where it highlights intersect, where my smart guide in pink tells me it's intersecting with that corner. So I've just clicked it and it's placed it there. We can see that the image that Autumn has supplied is smaller than my artboard, which isn't a problem at all. And let's just quickly zoom in on this image. So I've pressed Z on the keyboard. We'll find that working in Illustrator, you tend to use a lot of one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse. There's a lot of key shortcuts that you'll just come to understand and remember. So Z is to get to your magnifying glass. When I was panning around there, if you hold down the space bar and keep it held down and then click and drag, you can pan around your workspace as you want to. So the two of those together is the way you tend to move around. You do have options to change the zoom and zoom in and out down the bottom here, or you can preset views where you can save this as a view. So create a new view, and if I call this Autumn's image and click OK to that, then if I were to lose myself by panning around going, oh no, where was it? I can't find it. You can go up to view, click on Autumn's image and it'll bring you back to that. So it's a nice little feature. I'm going to go to my artboard tool here and I'm just going to move or reduce the size of my artboard to fit my object that I've just placed, which is the image. And that's just to tidy it up because I don't need the extra space there. So this is Autumn's replica dashboard that she's built. She's using some nice gradients behind at the very back, and she's got some header text or some title text built using, I'm guessing she's used Illustrator as well as me, and she's built little sections with some drop shadows around the outside of them, and we've got some buttons down the left hand side that are also using drop shadows, and then a big graphic circle there. So I need to replicate that, and hopefully it won't take me too long to do that. So pressing Z just to zoom out a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my artboard tool, which is now selecting my artboard. So when you've got your artboard tool selected, you cannot work on any of the other objects at that point. You're only working on the artboard itself. If you hold down in Illustrator the Alt key, if you're using a PC, or I think it's the Command key for a Mac computer, if you hold that down, you'll notice that the cursor is over here. The cursor moves to double cursors. And what that is doing is it's telling you you've got the opportunity to duplicate that object. It doesn't have to be just on artboards. It can be on a rectangle, a line. You can hover on it and hold down the Alt key, and then you get the option to duplicate that object. So if I hold down the Alt, left click and hold that down and drag, then I'm going to duplicate that object. You'll see that every now and then I get a smart guide, which is the pink line appearing, and that's saying that I'm lining up directly to the center of the object above. If I move out of sync of that, it disappears. But if you definitely want to move in sync with it, without taking off the Alt key or letting go of the mouse button, you can also press Shift, and now you cannot move away from that space. You can move into a 45-degree angle or across this way, but you cannot move incrementally. So I'm just going to place my second artboard, which is what I'm duplicating, down just below it. And what I do that is I need to let go of the mouse button first before I let go of any of the keyboard buttons. And now I've got artboard 2, or artboard 2 copy. It has also copied the object on top, so I'm just going to select that and delete that off there. So now I've got Autumn's image that I'm going to try and replicate down here on a second artboard. This is a good time to talk about the layers panel in Illustrator. So over here, this little icon here is the layers panel. And layers is absolutely key for building anything with Illustrator. You can create a number of, you can add in layers. So over here on my tools panel, we have the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool, you've got two options with this really. Is one, you can see it's highlighting and saying it's intersecting with the corner as I hover on the corner of my artboard. You can click and choose the dimensions of your artboard. I can't remember what the dimensions were, so I could have a guess at it being something along the lines of that. It's close, but no cigar. You know, it's not quite there. It's not the end of the world. I can always just expand it to intersect so it fits the whole of the artboard. Or if I were to undo that, take that off, if I press M, M's my tool for M means rectangle. So that's my quick key, pressing M. I could hover on here where it says intersect, click and drag, and I can drag it to where I want to be. If I wanted it as a square, you'll notice that you get a diagonal pink line coming across, and that's telling me that I'm in a perfect square shape. So here's my rectangle. So I need to create a gradient for this rectangle. It needs to be dark at the top, lightish blue in the left bottom corner, and lightish pink in the bottom right corner. So Illustrator is really good for stuff like this. Over here in my properties panel on the right hand side, if I click on fill, I have a number of swatches. These are preset swatches. These aren't any that I have put in myself. You have some that are gradiated swatches. So I'm just going to quickly choose any gradient. It's going from white to black. I can go into my gradient options. With this little bar here, when I click edit gradient, I can change where the gradient is moving and where the colors appear. So you could do the same here. You can change the dimensions and the gradient. But what I want actually is something called a freeform gradient. And a freeform gradient gives me points for where the colors appear, and then they blend between those points. So this freeform gradient is automatically put in 4 points in each corner of this object. And I can select these points and I can move them around. So I can make it more pink. And it's just they blend from one to the other. So I'm going to guess where Autumn's got her gradients. She's probably built this in Illustrator, so she's probably using the same tool or the same feature. And I'm going to put them right in the corner or closer into the corner. It doesn't really matter. It's not an exact science. It's gradients, isn't it? So what I can do is I could potentially add in more points, and I can double click these and change the colors as I want. You can see you get some really funky effects. But I'm going to take these extra ones out because I only need the 4 colors, because I've only got 4 colors on this gradient at the top. I'm going to click into this, and I'm going to go down to here with my hex code, and I'm going to type in a hex code that Autumn has given me. I'm not going to pretend that I actually know what this was. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build this curved rectangle, curved corners rectangle overlaying this. I could try and trace this and try and bring it on to here in the right place. That's probably a really easy thing to do. But let's try something else. If I press Ctrl R, I'll bring in my rulers across the top. So I'll just press Ctrl R again, they go, and they're back again. So that's Ctrl and R. And you can see that my 0 point for this is at the top left-hand corner of my first artboard, and the 0 point on the horizontal is at the top left-hand corner as well, which is fantastic. What I want to do though is I want to bring in some guidelines, and I can click on this ruler, drag across, and you can see now I'm getting this line appearing. I'm just going to line that up with the edge of this one here, and I'll do another one for the other side. So I drag it across and I put a guideline there. So now I know I need to build a rectangle that's appearing between this one and this one. So if I go to my rectangle tool, and I can then click on that guide, it highlighted the guide. So the pink writing says that it's intersecting with that guide. So I know it's the right width. Do I know that it's going to be the right height? Probably not. I'm going to probably eyeball this one and just say it's about that. If I press Control and the semicolon, I can just hide away my guides, so they're no longer showing. They're still here on the in the layer panel, as is my rectangle that I've put afterwards. But those guides are just out of the way, out of my view. What I'm going to do next is I've got this selected. I'm just going to go to my direct selection tool. So I'm going to make sure that it is perfectly centered vertically. So I've got it selected. If I hold down the Shift key, I can't select my rectangle because it's locked. So unlock it. If I hold down the Shift key, so I've now got both selected, and that's what these little icons here, these blue icons are saying. You've got this one selected and this one selected. I'm actually going to select without pressing any other keys, just single click on the rectangle behind, and that gives it a darker border. And up here, I've got aligned key object. My darker border tells me that this is the key object. So if I can now use these icons up here to align this object with my key object behind. So what I want to do is I want to vertically align it to center. So if I click on this one, my rectangle just dropped down slightly, and I'll just make sure that it's dead at center in the middle place. I like clicking on that one, which it is. Click away, and they're both unselected. I'll lock my background gradient again so that I don't mess it up. It's going to be quite tricky to find where my rectangle is, because this background gradient is locked. I can just drag and I can find it quite easily, or I can just select on my layers panel if I know which one I'm looking for. So this is my gradient. What I need to do now is I need to fill it with a color and give it some corners, some curved corners. So what I can do with curved corners in Illustrator is I can try and eyeball it by, so let me zoom in here so make this a little bit easier for you guys to see. I'm just using my selection tool. Every now and then I click on that so I can make selections and resize objects, so you'll see that I'm on the standard black arrow. So if I hover on this circle here, my icon changes. It's got a little curve behind the icon. I wonder if it shows up better or no, it doesn't. Okay, but you just have to trust me, there's a little curve underneath the arrow now when I hover on that. When I come off of it, come on, let's do that again. There we go. So I've not got a curve on my arrow at the moment. When I hover on there, I do. That means I'm going to affect the corner. I can click and I can drag and I can resize the corners as I want to. And I'm doing that. I'm doing all four corners at once. I can do individual corners if I want to. And you can see the tooltips telling me what the radius of that corner is. So I could go, okay, maybe it's about that. If I zoom out a little bit, I go, yeah, it's close. Not quite happy with that. What I could do is I could really specify what the radius of that corner is. Now I can do that up here, or you can double click on it and you get a pop-up window appearing with all the options that you can do on that object. And here we can say that I can individually, if I don't link those, I can individually change different corners with a specific radiuses, but I'll keep this linked. And I'll just type in a radius of about 45. And whenever I click off of it, it goes, because at the moment my rectangle here has no color fill and then no stroke to it. But looking at autumns, there's no stroke around the outside. Stroke is borderline. It's just the terminology in Illustrator. Fill is obviously the fill of the object. So let's give it a fill. So none of these preset ones are probably going to be the right fill color that I want. So I'm going to go into my colors and I'm going to type in a hex code. So I could type one in. Actually, let's not type it in just yet. Let's just quickly select my rectangle, and I can go to my color dropper, my eyedropper tool. We can press I for that, for the eyedropper. And I could, if I wanted to, select on the image above and go, well, it's about that. It's good, but it's not quite close enough, because what you'll notice is that it's bluish grey here, but it's pinkish grey over here. And it's grey at the top. So what that's telling me is that this rectangle behind is actually an opaque rectangle. So to apply a drop shadow in Illustrator, we select our object, go to Effect at the top, and then we go into Stylize, and let's go into Drop Shadow. We'll keep it on multiply, opacity. Let's bring this down a little bit, because you can see already that, because I've got preview selected, it's seeming very dark compared to this one. So let's bring this down to about 25% rather than what we had. So that looks pretty good to me for an opacity viewpoint. I think I'm not going to play around with that too much. So that's that object done. So let's start off with yet another rectangle. I could use a rounded rectangular tool if I wanted to, but I quite like the method that I'm doing. So I'm just going to zoom into this, bring this back. So M for my rectangle tool, and it's going to be somewhere around there as a guess. Oh, look at that. Pretty good guess. And let's line that up. So there we go. If you remember, I can select these corners and I can do it manually. But if I bring it all the way across till I get to the red, it means that it's turning it into a full circle, which is effectively what Autumn's got here. It's the full circle. So that's how you do that. You just drag the corner until it comes to the red line on the edge. So I need to give this a new fill. And this time, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to reuse this color for the text. So I need to save that as a swatch. So to do that, I've already got it selected as my active fill color. If I come up to here, I can go new swatch. I can give it a name. So let's go light blue. And then press OK. And now that appears here. Well, let's just pick it, shall we? It's probably easier. Let's go with that. There we go. Rather than trying to work out a color for it. Okay, so I've got my color that matches this color. I need to put a stroke around the edge, so a border. So I can click into here. I can click on white, and assuming it's white. And at the moment, I've got a 1 pixel stroke width, and that looks pretty good. Okay, but I need some text in there. I need to put for personal finance dashboard. So I can go to my type tool. If I press T, that brings up my type tool. You can see the cursor down here is looking more like font. I'm just going to bring this up above outside of here for now. It's defaulted to a random font. I don't know why this is so huge on the screen, but anyway, the font that I want is Gilroy, and I'm going to use use the extra bold version of that. And from my practice run, I know that this text is about 41 point high. Perfect. If I were to click away from that, it's got black text, and that's because it's given it a black fill. So if I click into my fills again, go to my swatches, and then this is where I can choose my light blue color that I saved from when I had this selected. So now I've got the right color. So I can double click into here, and I can just type in finance dashboard. Then click away, and now I've got my text. I'm just going to put that centrally. Now, what I want to do is I want to line this up with this object. So again, I'm going to select this object. I'm going to select my text. So they're both selected. Remember, I have align to key object would be my preference. At the moment, it's telling me that this is my key object, whereas I want to tell it that this is my key object. And I'm going to say align centrally in the horizontal, and then align vertically. And now they are both aligned. What I want to do now is select them both. I'm just going to right click and group them. So when I end up wanting to move them around the dashboard, I can move them both together in one go. And I'm going to make sure that I bring it down in the right plane. And then I'm going to align it till I get that pink horizontal line, which is telling me that the center of that object is aligning with the top of the opaque rectangle behind it. So that's in its correct position. Lovely. I could duplicate this and resize it to start creating these, but I won't. I'm going to create these separately. I'm just going to bring that up so we can see it. I'm going to zoom in. So I've got this selected. I can now fill it with that color that I used down below. I can do the same thing on my corners. So I can drag those in. So I've now got my rounded corners. And I've also got my 1 point white outline. Again, let's select my type tool, click up here. I'm going to want it aligned center, because what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to align them centrally to the object. So I'm going to keep that as aligned center. No way do I want it as bold and as big as this. So I'm going to work in the light version of Gilroy, and I'm going to go with a font size of about, at a guess, 24.5. And that looks about right. Again, my fill is the wrong color, so I'm going to put it as the light color, and I click away. So if I double click into here, so to adjust the text, I'm going to go spending by category. Lovely. And then do my trick again of selecting both objects. So select a second time on the object I want to be the key object, and then I'm going to align it centrally to that object, and then I will group it. So now I've got that smaller text, and if I click and hold down Shift, I'll bring it back down here, and I'll do exactly the same thing where I get my pink horizontal line and it lines up. I'm going to duplicate this time, and I'm just going to try my best to line it up. Let's put a grid line in here, or guideline even. Bring this down, zoom that in, so you can see that that guideline is pretty much where it is. Showcasing this in its most, I don't want to duplicate it, in its most simple form because I'm trying to talk about options as we do it. So there we go. So there we go, we've got those three. Took longer than what I wanted it to, but never mind. Right. Just going to quickly create these three objects again in small rectangles. So let's go with something like that. So I'm just doing that whole thing again of essentially tracing it, which is fine because that's what I'm trying to replicate. Okay, and let's go with about, let's try 33 is too much. Let's try 25. It's not quite right either. Should we try? Let's try 15. Okay, 15 looks better. Okay, so I'm just gonna line those up a little bit better than what it was. Or is 15 not quite right? Maybe 15 is not quite right. Let's go 20. Okay, that's better. Cool. Did that up here because now I know that my rectangles are all in the right places. I haven't filled those rectangles because if I filled them, then I wouldn't have been able to overlay the text in the right place. Because this is going to be a bit of a guessing game vertically where those texts were going to sit. So I can now unlock my rectangles. I can select those three rectangles. Just hide away the guide. So I've got my three rectangles selected, and then I can put in my fill for the rectangles, and I want to make sure I've got no stroke on them as well. So if I were to select over the text as well, I will then select all three text objects and all three rectangles. So everything is selected. Just going to zoom out. They're all still selected, and then I can just hover on a path, click and hold, and then I can drag it all down. If I hold down Shift, it'll stay in the right plane, and then maybe I don't know where vertically it needs to fit. So okay, so filter dashboard by year is a little bit of text that appearing up here. So let's type that in, filter dashboard by year. Okay, zoom in on this, get them both in there. There we go. Okay, so filter dashboard by year. Let's gonna use dark blue again. This looks like it's a slightly different blue, so maybe it is this blue. Let's try that one, which I don't have saved, so I'm going to have to type it in, which I believe was something like that. So that's not quite right. I need to adjust that to be slightly lighter. So let's go into here and let's just lighten it up a little bit. And oops. Or maybe it's it's just a blurred effect of it. Let's go with that. Just keep it as that. Let's go quickly. Not that I've been particularly quick in this at all, but never mind. Right. Let's bring that down. We're going to place that just around about there. That'll do. Right, we've got a curved arrow, something that's not a rectangle. Yay. So looking at this curved arrow, I don't think this has been done with a circle. I think it's been done with the pen tool. So the pen tool is a particularly fun tool that you can use, and you can use this to draw curves. For example, you can do fun things like this, like that. You can do fun little objects like this with the pen tool. If you didn't have any fill on it and you just would stroke, then you can do some fun curves. In this object, I could use the pen tool to create a curved effect, like something like that. If I escape out of that, so I'm just clicking, dragging, and then clicking for each point, and then I pressed escape to end the line. And so I could create a curve like that that might then fit what Autumn's done. But for me, what I quite like doing is if I go to the ellipse, so L for ellipse, which is in here, so the ellipse tool L. If you go to the ellipse tool, you can build out a circle. You can create ellipses. If you hold down shift, then you get your perfect circle like you do with, if you hold down shift with the rectangle tool, you get a perfect square. And you can draw a circle like this. And what I quite like doing to get a sort of perfect curve, I'm just going to line up the top anchor point to the end there, and I'm just going to hold down shift till I get generally the right size. Okay, what you can do with this is if you use your direct selection tool, so this one here, so you select A, you can click on a single anchor point. So let me zoom in. So these points here are anchor points. So let's go to A, there's an anchor point, there's an anchor point, an anchor point there. If I find an anchor point and select it and press delete, then you can clear it. So now it's a half moon shaped arc. I can select this one, anchor point, and delete that. And then I've got myself a perfect curve going round. And that's what I'll probably use. So I use that as a perfect curve. It starts here and it comes round to there. In Illustrator, any of your any item in your properties or up here that has text that is underlined, that means that you can click into it and you can open up a whole new panel of information. So in Stroke, I can click into this and I can say whether the line finishes with rounded corners or straight corners. I can see also whether if it was a full shape, the stroke or the outline is aligned inside, so the stroke fills inside the edge or outside the edge or evenly. But down here, this is where I put my arrowheads on. So maybe I'll choose the correct side for the arrowhead. So something like that looks massive, but I could change the percentage on that. So maybe let's go with 80%. And what's happened is my arrowhead is stopping at the end of my curve. Well, I don't want that to happen. I want my arrowhead to basically come directly down at this point. So if I can change it to extend past the end of the line, which is what it's doing now. So it's now lined up nicely. I'm going to obviously change that to that color. I'm going to go along with that sort of look, I think. Maybe I might slightly make it bigger. It's hard to see what you're doing when you're zoomed out. So it was slightly smaller than Autumn's. So I'm just going to about the right size. Good. And let's just bring that down. And we'll bring it down to about there. Cool. What I'm going to, I could go into a real sort of detail of lining this stuff up, but I'm not going to now. Let's just get rid of those. Okay, so we've done that now. So all we've got left to do is create these icons. So go to our ellipse tool again. I could drag it. I could click and say exactly what radiuses I want, or dimensions I want. But also, if you are clicking and dragging with the ellipse tool, hold down Shift to get your perfect circle. But if you hold down Alt or Command on your Mac at the same time, then it pulls out from the center of where you've selected, which is quite nice. So what I'm going to do is find my cursor. I'm going to bring in my cursor and I'm going to line it up with the center of those objects. And how did I know it was the center of those objects? Because I use this house as my guide to those. So I haven't locked the guide, so I should be able to just drag that across. So I get it to the center of the house. Good. So now I can use my ellipse tool. So L for ellipse, and I'm going to click on my guide. And I'm going to hold down my Shift for a perfect circle and hold down Alt so it comes out to the right from the center. And I'm going to guess it's about that size. Let's go with, actually I'm just going to change the dimensions to about 85. I think that's good enough. And then I'm just going to align that up to the center of there. It's great, good. Let's fill it in. Let's get rid of my stroke. I don't need that anymore so I can see it. Let's apply my drop shadow. So this appears quite strongly compared to that. So I'm going to drop that down a little bit. So now my drop shadow is a bit more even to this one. Even adjust that. So I've selected my circle. Over my properties, I can click in drop shadow. Actually, no, I want to go into my appearance and then click into there and just adjust it in here. I'm just going to make it slightly darker so we can see it. Perfect. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle now, another ellipse. So let's go ellipse. I'm just going to draw it from here, Shift and Alt held down so it draws out. I'm going to guess it's about that size. Good. Zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And so it's about there. So if I draw that in again, I've done it again where I can't see what I'm doing. But never mind. Right, so let's do it by eye about there. So I've now got, if I look at my layer pane, I've got this ellipse, which is selected. I've got that ellipse there, which is this one here. And I've got this one here, which is this one. So if I select both of them, so it's this one and this one. What I'm going to do is I want to take away this inner ellipse. And there's a whole host of ways you can do this in Illustrator. The easiest way I find is to use a shape builder tool, which is this one here on the left hand side, and it's Shift and M for the shape builder tool. You have to have both objects selected, but now you can see when I hover over them, it identifies each object. If you were to just click on this now, you would end up combining these shapes. It's hard to see it. I'm going to try and get to a point where you can see the cursor. Right. The cursor in the bottom right hand corner of the cursor is a little plus sign. If I hold down Alt, it moves and changes to a little minus sign. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to say, if I click on this section, holding down Alt, the minus sign, I'm going to take it away from the other object. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to click, and that's it. And then this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it slightly differently. So I'm going to create my ellipse. I'm going to bring it on here. And I'm going to select both objects. But this time I'm going to go into Windows, I'm going to go into Pathfinder and open up a new box. In Pathfinder, we've got a number of options for creating sort of compound paths. So this one is minus front. If I click that, it is literally doing what I was doing before, taking away the object in front of it. What I can also do is I can hold down Alt and click that. What that means is I should still be able to move this hole and change where it's going to appear. So it is a compound shape, but this time it keeps the two ellipses. So that's quite a cool little trick if people didn't know about it. I'm going to put it back to where it was. I don't think I can duplicate that. I'm going to try. So you can see I can adjust the shape itself. Click on that. Because I created a compound path this time using the Pathfinder, but also holding down Alt when I selected the tool, I've now created, I've got circles that I can adjust, and they're still taking, the hell? I've got guides in here. Right. Let's take out my guides a second. That's probably what screwed up my alignment earlier. There we go. So I've now got 3 circles that are all cut out, even though I only used Pathfinder on the first circle. So you can see the objects behind it, which is great. I'm going to do the same thing again, so I'll repeat that process. So let's go to a rectangle tool now. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pen tool now. Excellent. And I'm going to draw half a shape. I'm going to click here. I'm going to come down to maybe about there. Come across. I'm holding down Shift to get a perfect horizontal line. Hold down Shift to get a perfect vertical line. Hold down Shift. It's filling, which is why it's doing something weird. So there. Now this is going to make it slightly awkward, but I know it's going to be about there, and then to the center. So I'm going to look at that and go, what did I just do? Let me just select this, take off the fill, and then put on the stroke. So I've drawn, what I'm doing is I'm aiming for the middle of this line, the middle of the width of this line. So I'm clicking in the middle of there, down to the middle, somewhere in there, to the middle, to the middle, to the middle, to the middle. So I've drawn half the shape. I could continue, but it wouldn't be particularly symmetrical. So what I'm going to do now is I've got one half of it. I'm going to right click on this object, transform, and I'm going to reflect. So I'm going to reflect in the vertical plane. Take this out of the way. But also, if I put in a well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this object. Try that again. Transform, reflect. There we go. So if I was reflecting in the vertical plane, it would flip it across, so it would look like this. But I don't want it to flip the original. I want to create a copy. So if I click on copy, I've now got two. I've got the original that goes this way, and then I've got an exact copy but flipped on that side. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to select the copy. I'm going to bring him across till they intersect, and I'm going to drop it there. Problem is they're still two separate shapes. So I'm going to zoom in up here. I'm going to get my selection tool. So I've got the right shape selected, so the one that was the copy. Hold down shift, and I'm going to select the path on the second shape. And then this can be sometimes hit and miss, this tool. It's in here. It's called join tool. I'm hoping that if I draw across the section up there, that now has filled. So you can see they were two separate with the edges, the end points of the lines. But when I drew across with the join tool, it joined them up. And then if I go to my selection tool and select one of the paths, it selects both. They're now one object. And that's how you can create a really nice symmetrical object like a house. So the way we do that is we get our ellipse tool again, we find the center of this circle, which is there. It does say center at some point, there you go, center. I'm going to click Shift Alt, I'm going to draw outwards, and it's going to keep the last setting that I had. So let's just take off the fill so you can sort of see where I am with the line itself. I'm just going to bring that in a little bit because I don't want, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the text on that line. So I don't want the text being too far away, too big a gap. So I'm going to bring that in. So something about that maybe. Okay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get we can either use our type tool, or we can use our type on a path tool. So type on a path tool, you can click it directly. So you have to find the tool in here. It doesn't have a quick link keyboard shortcut, sorry. Whereas if I just press T, I get the type tool. Now the type tool doesn't let you type on the path immediately. You have to hold down Alt. So if I'm going to zoom in, go back to the type tool. If I hold down Alt, the cursor changes to a wiggly line. I click on that, and then I get this happen. So this is my type on the line. So the line is in blue, and the type is going around that line. I'm just going to align this to the left. And just click in here, and I'm going to type in home. Now, obviously, that's way too big. What I'm going to do now is I can drag these sort of vertical lines or lines coming out from the text, from the center of the circle, and I can move the text where I want it to be. And if I highlight it, I can change the size of the font, and I don't know, let's try something like that'll do. Make sure the fill of the font is what I want it to be, and it's pretty good. Maybe it needs to, oh god. So maybe that needs to come up a little bit. Maybe it needs to come down on the size. Let's go 80, right. So I'm going to place that in here. Oh, that's way too big. That's me, by the way, if you don't know who I am. And you probably don't want to know who I am by the end of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my face inside that circle. But the problem is this face is on top of the circle. So go to my layers, I'm going to bring my ellipse up on top. I'm going to take away the fill. Then what I'm going to do is, this is going to be quite tricky because the circle is. So I'm going to put it above my face. Let's just make me slightly smaller. That might do. And then I'm going to slip knife. Now I can't cut the circle out of the image in the same way that we were cutting the holes out of the circles, creating the buttons on the side here. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to go up to Object and I'm going to create a clipping mask. I'm going to say Make, and that then is using the top object to mask for the bottom picture. And now I can move me around. I can give this a stroke and we can make that large like that. And then lastly, let's bring this down somewhere around here. I'm going to come out so I can see generally where it needs to go. Maybe, yeah, that'll do. That'll do. And that, he says, is that. Took maybe longer. I probably talked longer than I probably should have done.